It's Tuesday, July 8th. I'm Aaron Whited, and welcome to The Lodge. All right, you guys, I know that it's been a minute, and sorry for the delay, but had a lot going on. I know nobody cares to hear about that when they tune into a podcast or listen to a YouTube video, but I felt bad. My new goal is to try to be much more consistent with the podcast, just to kind of keep everything rolling and keep you guys entertained as well as it's cathartic for me to get stuff out to y'all. Well, so it's just me today, and as you know, I also have I'm a part of a concrete cleaning and paver and house washing business and all that fun stuff. So I am on the road headed to go do a big paver job. So I figured what better than to take some time and run a podcast real quick. So where we last left off, I think the last time that I was on, me and my father-in-law Mike, I know it's been like January, but me and my father-in-law Mike, we went up to the Chesapeake Bay and did some duck hunting, which was awesome. And we were successful, got some scoters. And believe it or not, people, they talk crap about scoters and how they taste, or sea ducks and how they taste. And if you just sear those bad boys up, they are actually pretty good. Now, what's happened since then? Well, had an had an unbelievable turkey season this year. It was pretty incredible. It was incredible to the point of I have started working on writing a book to categorize my Grand Slam adventures. So that should be out soon. I still have the Miriam to go. Spoiler alert. So once I get the Miriam, then I'll be back. Then I'll be back with some more info on the book. But so this year, nailed a stud of an Eastern, and kind of the way that hunt went was was pretty wild. I I had the birds. I had multiple birds gobbling one morning, and they ended up coming in. But when they come in, like they were probably 60, I don't know, 60, 65 ish yards. They were far enough to where I didn't feel super, I didn't feel super comfortable about taking the shot. And I guess the reason, I guess the reason I didn't feel super comfortable letting it rip is because I was on some friends' land who were nice enough to let me come hunt. And I am always going to try to err on the side of the ethical choice. Now, could my shotgun, I've got a Browning A5 and I use a Kicks Goblin Thunder choke. Awesome setup. Awesome setup. I use Longbeard XR 3.5 inch number fives. And yes, I know that that load at 60 yards could drop hammer, but I hesitated. And for me, if I hesitate, I would rather let the opportunity go if it's further like that. Now, if those birds would have been at 50 or 40, done. No question. Boom, done. So they came in, they taunted me, and they were just kind of hanging out there in front of me. And trust me, the amount of time that the thought crossed into my mind, shoot it, put it, aim right there at his neck, put it on the wattles, pull the trigger. But I didn't do it. So the next day, come around, I didn't bump any birds. They had no idea I was in the world. And the next day, it was a pretty incredible hunt. Um, I definitely go into detail with it in the book, and I'll tell you a little bit about it now. But Ended up having a bird come in from a completely different location than I was set up for. And he came in to literally like the end of my feet, where I had cover in front of me and set up expecting him to come from that way. He did not. And he came totally in from the other direction. And all I did as far as to get that bird fired up and get him to come in was soft call. Like, don't underestimate when it comes to turkey hunting. Don't underestimate the power of the soft call. And that's quite simply really light tree yelps and some different, I mean, just some different little clucks and stuff like that. And that bird was hammering his head off and went silent, hit the ground, and came in. Not, I can't say on a string, because he was definitely behind me, and I thought he was going to come from left, but he came from the right. He zigged when I thought he was going to zag, but he came in quick. And basically, I whipped at 5 yards. I whipped, and I know it sounds funny. That's super close. I mean, I could have probably hit him with the butt stock of the gun versus trying to snap shoot. But he came in on my offhand side. It was a mess, and I was so bummed out. Like, after it happened, I was so bummed out. I got a decoy the day before after the birds came in and hung up, further away from me than I could get a shot. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get me an Avian X breeder hen, and we're not going to have us any more of these holdup issues. I'm going to just go ahead and get this thing. And he didn't even see the decoy because he came in on the opposite side. It was a whole thing. But uh, the song by Joe Cocker, I get by with a little help from my friends. Well, a buddy was over there, and I went down and was talking to him, and he was like, "Dude, shake it off. It happens to everybody." And I know, like, I love turkey hunting, and I try to put as much effort and as much focus into it as I possibly can. And when something like that happens that I wasn't prepared for or wasn't planning to happen, that just sucks so bad. Like, I always try to be as prepared as humanly possible. And daggone it, if that didn't, I don't know, that didn't bite me in the hind end. But I'm down there talking to the buddy, and while we're talking, we hear a bird fire up, and he goes, "You better get back out there." And I'm like, "Dude," I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't know what angle to take. Like, I'm questioning life at this point. And then we hear another bird fire up, and he goes, "Did you leave your decoy out in the field?" And I said, "Yep, I did." And he goes, "Well, it's probably getting bred right now." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." And sure enough, we we got back up there. He came with me. We got back up there. I up to belly crawled up to where basically that bird was, or where I was set up earlier in the day. And I'll be daggone if my decoy, my new Avian X decoy, wasn't getting bred by a big old stud of an Eastern. So knocked him down, made a money shot. Like, I'll put it to you this way, not to get overly graphic, but the shot was good enough that it split the skin on his head. Like, I was not missing that. And got him. It was cool, and it was really cool that I got to share that with a buddy who basically, when my confidence was at the lowest, was there to kind of help bring me back into focus. And he was as excited as I was, which made it even cooler. Um, but that was that Eastern hunt, and it was, I mean, it was great. It was great. One of those hunts that I'll remember forever. Like, basically had to belly crawl in to the spot because thankfully that bird was hammer focused on my decoy, that's the purpose of a decoy, right? So after after the Eastern hunt, I had some time. Sorry, I just got cut off for no apparent reason. After the Eastern hunt, we had planned. When I say we, Big Mike, my father-in-law, and I, we had planned for a year that we were all going to head. That's my mother-in-law and wow, Whited Outdoors wife, we were all going to head down to San Antonio, Texas for a turkey hunt, for a Rio hunt. And we all loaded up in the car and began a 17-hour trek from South Carolina to San Antonio, Texas. And if you've never been in a vehicle, especially with your in-laws for 17 plus hours, you really figure out where everybody stands and how your relationship kind of sits and feels. And believe it or not, it was great. It wasn't a bad trip at all. God love my mother-in-law. She is super excited about everything. Very, very hyper focused on a lot of stuff. So I have to remind myself at times just to take a breath. Don't try to listen to everything. But we drove. It was neat. We only hit real bad traffic once. We all took turns driving, and it's one of those. I mean, a trip that long, it's one of those things to where you end up just never wanting to see a vehicle ever again. I've come to learn about myself. I did the drive y'all have heard me talk about. I did the drive down to Florida from South Carolina, which was 12 hours or so by myself. I drove down one day, harvested a bird, and drove back the next day. And it wasn't bad, but you get up over like 10 hours in a car, and it's pretty brutal. Not to mention, I've got a bulging disc in my neck at C6, which sends just awful humming pain down my right arm, like into my thumb and index finger. It's just like a humming, not great feeling. And could not get comfortable in the truck. That was right after the incident happened, but could not get comfortable in the truck. So I'm moving around all over creation. Excuse me. And about the only time that I really could get comfortable was when I was driving, just because of the angle that I could sit at and whatever. So that the driving piece really helped out. But me and Big Mike split the drive on the way down, and it went by decently quick. Texas, when you're driving to Texas and especially going towards San Antonio, when you cross into Texas, you're not you're not there. Like most places, like if you cross into South Carolina and you're headed to my house in South Carolina, you're like, oh man, we're pretty much there. No, Texas is freaking huge. It is huge. So we crossed into Texas and got caught in a little bit of traffic around Houston, and then made our way on down towards San Antonio. This is how this is how tired I was from driving when we got there. My father-in-law was like, "Hey, would you want to go to the bar and have a bourbon?" I'm a bourbon fan, and I looked at him and said, "Nope, I am going to bed. I appreciate the thought, but I am going to bed." So I went on and went to bed. We got up the next morning, headed on down to our destination. We hunted with Mr. Chuck Ward. If you are looking for a really cool hunt, you need to go check out 67hunts.com. He is very hard to get in with, but if you're able to get to go with him, then he's the kind of outfitter that I love. He's literally the guy who has a scouting report. He'll give you the scouting report and hook you up with the area that you're going to and then set you free and let you turkey hunt. And I love that. I love that so much because you're paying basically for access to the land and for a place to stay. And that's what I loved. And it was really, really cool. Now the landscape down there for a turkey hunt, the landscape down there is a totally different adventure than any type of landscape that I've been in before. As far west as I've been prior to this trip was going to Arkansas with my buddy Andrew. And Arkansas is flat, but it still has what I would call like the eastern, I don't know, eastern land look to it, for it to be west of the Mississippi. But the area we went to in Texas, you're going down the hill like the whole way there. Like it keeps getting flatter and flatter and flatter. And then once you get there, then it starts to look like actual desert Texas. Cactuses everywhere. Like, and a cactus looks cool. And then when you see the needles on the cactus, you kind of think to yourself, huh, that doesn't look like it would stick you too bad. No, the little needles that you see, the little fluffy, I don't know, kind of soft thistle things you see, those are like millions all piled in together. So if you brush that or even look at it, you're going to get stuck full of cactus. And I brushed a couple cactuses and didn't even realize that I had brushed a couple cactuses and was pulling those things out of my hind end for a while. Like I pulled a cactus thistle out of my side the other day, and this is July, and we went and hunted in April. So that tells you that tells you kind of how sneaky those things are. Um, but the hunt was fantastic. It was really my father-in-law Mike's. It was his first ever real turkey hunt. Like he's done the deal where he's gone out and just sat in a random area in a blind before and hoped for the best, which I am not a fan of. I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather run and gun turkey hunt. But excuse me. But I I fall into that category. I like to run and gun, and then sometimes I know I get too anxious and I move too much. But I've started to make myself really, really sit longer. Now I'm not going to sit in an area if there's nothing gobbling or I'm not hearing really anything moving because I like to go hunt a gobbling bird. You know, I'm not opposed to deer hunting a turkey coming in, but at the same time, I would rather have them gobble. I'd rather have them respond to me and then them do their thing based off of me. But we got down there, and day one, it was cool. We got there, got set up in it was like a little mesquite um, tree thicket area beside some water because I figured big time water down there was going to be the key because it was hot. It wasn't overly humid, but it was hot. And Mike had on a ghillie suit, like a deer hunting ghillie suit. It was a cheaper one that he had just had, and that thing did not breathe at all. And I literally thought that he was going to heat stroke out on me at one point. He was red and sweating, and he's the dude that in the middle of the summer will be curled up in my living room with a blanket. So he doesn't get hot very easy. But it was hot, and he ended up the next day wearing his elevated two Sitka stuff, even though the color didn't match super great. He ended up wearing that just because he was he was gonna die. I do recommend if you ever go turkey hunt in Texas or an area like that, that you bring a turkey chair with you. I've got an old Turkey Thugs um, turkey chair, and I brought that, and Mike used that, and I used my Sitka turkey vest, and he ended up being more comfortable and was able to sit still better than what I was, just because you don't have a ton of trees that you can lean up against and kind of get comfortable on. So it panned out. It panned out having the chair. Now, granted, the downside of having the chair is you got to carry that thing around, and there's not a super light one that's super comfortable to sit on. But we get there. So day one, we're down there, and in this mesquite, thick, thistly mesquite stuff, and I couldn't hear diddle. I'm sitting up on the front, like the front facing more towards the water, and Mike's kind of off to the right a little bit, but I'm right in the wind. The wind was like 20. I'm sorry, I'm yawning, y'all. I am sorry, I'm yawning. The wind was hitting so hard in the front, I couldn't hear anything. But where he was a little more wind shielded, so he could hear better than I could. And I go back, I crawl back through the mesquite and get over to him and I'm like, hey, let's move out of here because if I can't hear anything, I don't think any of my calls are getting out of here. And and he was like, oh, okay. So um we get up and I start stepping out of the mesquite, and I see a red-headed bird come walking down this alleyway off behind us, and I'm like, "Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me!" And we dive back in, and I'm like, "Mike," I'm like, there was a bird. I couldn't tell if it was a Jake or a Tom walking down the road right there." And he goes, "Well, I thought I heard something back there." I'm like, "Dude, you got to tell me. You got to tell me these things. I couldn't hear anything." He goes, "Well, I didn't want to cry wolf," which I totally get. But that bird was coming in, and sure enough, he was gone. Like he bailed like any turkey would, and we're on the move again. We just kind of bounced around the rest of day one. We saw a ton of hens and stuff like that moving around out there on the farm we were on, and packed up, left that day, went and had a good meal that night, got some sleep, got up early the next morning, and headed back out. And it's one of those things to where I typically don't like to walk around with a light when I'm turkey hunting because I feel like they can totally see it. Oh, I forgot one thing. I'm so sorry, y'all. Rios are night owls. Holy crap, they're night owls. We left the first night at the normal time that an Eastern would go up to roost. We left. We left. We headed back, and Chuck meets us in the driveway and goes, "Y'all didn't want to roost a bird?" And I'm like, "Dude, I tried. I tried. I was looking everywhere. I was listening, and I was like, I have no idea where they're going." And he goes, "Oh, they're just now going to roost, and it's like dark outside." And I'm like, "You have got to be kidding me." And he was dead on. Those daggone birds, they waited. They waited till late to go to roost. Like Easterns don't mess around. It starts getting a little dark, and they're already on the way to roost. They have packed their bags. They are headed on up. They don't even care. Now, Rios, I guess it's a little different with the predator situation because they can see a long way away because it's pretty much flat. I don't know, man, but I felt kind of like a goober, packing up and heading in, and it was like, oh, okay. And yeah, he was right. They didn't they didn't even play. They went ahead and and headed on to roost super late. Well, so the next day we get up, and like I said, I don't typically like going in with a light just because I feel like turkeys can see so well. If they see a light, I don't know if they're smart enough to put two and two together, but if they see a light, they're going to act a little funny. So I turned the light on because the risk of the rattlesnake, the risk of the stepping on a cactus, the risk of the not greatness was very true. Like it was one of those to where I didn't want to step on anything or get hit with anything that I was going to have permanent damage from. So tried to plan ahead as best as I could. Thankfully, on our walk up through there, though, we didn't run into any rattlesnakes. We didn't run into I don't know, anything super scary, but we get to one point and I am so happy that I had excuse me. I am so happy that I had my headlamp on because I see a big white fluffy bushy tail sticking up in front of me. And there's a daggone skunk, just an enormous skunk with his tail raised. And we proceed to back up and go the other way. So that panned out pretty good not to get sprayed by a skunk. Father-in-law's dog, Caesar, got sprayed by a skunk not too long ago, and their house smelled like a skunk for months. So I didn't really want to have to drive back from Texas smelling like a giant skunk. One of the craziest things though about how Rios operate, they don't do a lot of noise. They don't like hens don't make a lot of racket. About all they do is yelp. And I thought for sure that I thought for sure that all turkeys were going to kind of, cut, yelp, maybe even cluck, purr, putt, whatever. But these things, and I'm sure they do putt, but these things just kind of yelp, just different cadence of yelp, which was odd. Like I definitely thought it was different. Um, so we wrap up that first morning hunt, and we're on the way back out. And sure enough, there's a house on this farm, and in the backyard of this house are three toms and a hen, and the toms are running the hen around this backyard. And I got the go ahead from Chuck to try to because it was a part of the property to try to get down there and see if we could call the birds off. That didn't work out, but it was still kind of wild that they were just out there in the open doing their thing. um, we left there. We left there and went back to camp and got some food. And the big thing when you're on a hunt like this, and for those of you that haven't gone with a guide or gone anything like that, if you're a casual hunter, like when I say casual, like if you go on a trip to do other stuff, like to see sights and do whatever, go travel and look at stuff, then going on a hunt to somewhere is not what you want to do if you want to look at other stuff. Because when I get there, I'm in hunt mode. Like I want to rock and roll until I get my game species on the ground. And it it's almost I almost put too much pressure on myself to try to make it happen, if that makes any sense. Like I want that's my focus. I'm paying to be there. I'm paying for the access to stuff. I want to rock and roll. And that's what I do. But we got there, we got some food, we headed back out. And this other place we were at, it's wild out there because the way that the ground sets up, you could be down on a bottom and you might be like a total of 2 feet elevation difference from what's above you. But the way sound carries stuff that might even be just a little bit above you, that sound is going to carry and sound like it's on top of a ridge somewhere. Well, so Mike and I went down in this bottom near a creek where I thought for sure these birds were going to be set up. And Chuck's scouting report did a good job kind of telling us some places to look for that midday loafing and kind of stuff from the birds. Well, we get down in there and a bird just sets off. And I'm doing some yelps and stuff like that, and he's just not getting any closer. And I'm like, is he hung up somewhere? Can he not get to us? Is he on the other side of the creek? So we back out a little bit and try to call again. And we back out to a different spot. And I thought he'd be closer to us and able to get to us a little easier. And just tried to call, nothing. Like he kept gobbling. He wouldn't get any closer. And then he had a buddy fire up kind of adjacent to him. Well, this is getting weird because I don't understand why they're not coming to us and why we can't see them because there's some underbrush stuff, but it's stuff that an Eastern would come hauling tail to if he's fired up. So we back out again and get back out to the main kind of main area where we had parked the truck. And not gonna lie to y'all, I heard what sounded like a Jake yelping, like a Jake yelping slash attempting to gobble a little bit. So I sent Mike around the corner because Mike was fine with shooting whatever. So I sent Mike around the corner to see if he could see something and to stay low. And it's harder than you think to hide two people. But sent Mike around the corner, and he gets around the corner, and I have on my Sitka OptiFade. What is it? It's my Sitka subalpine OptiFade stuff. So I lay down in the grass, and he comes walking back around the corner, and I'm in the plain, like what you'd think would be plain sight, and he can't see me at all. And I scared the ever loving crap out of him. It was pretty epic. So congrats, Sitka. That stuff works even against human eyes. But anyway, so we get back up to the truck. And I see a line of cactuses or cacti or however the hell you say it. And I look back up through there and I see a gap, like a little gap in the cactuses. And I told Mike, hey, I'm going to walk up here and look through the fence and see what I can see. Well, I get up there and look through the fence and it's an opening to a field. And the field is the highest land piece. Like it's elevated up just a little bit from us. And I stick my head through the fence and I go, yelp, yelp, ow, ow, ow. 3 of them just hammer off right on top of me. So I run back and try to get set up on the closest thing possible. And God love Mike, he was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, well, there's birds right there. Get down. And he's a very cautious guy. So I couldn't get him just to dive down, but he sat down. And we sat there, kept calling, and they were gobbling back to us and moving back and forth. They wanted to come to us, but they didn't want to come through the only opening there was there. So I get Mike, we pull back under this giant live oak, like the biggest tree around. It's shaded. There's no way these birds could see us. And I set up Henrietta, my decoy. I set her up for about 35 yards away from us. And there's no way these birds could find us or see us or whatever. And it's getting to be like that 10, 15-minute mark where if these birds aren't breaking and coming to us, then I don't know what else to do. So I look at Mike and I'm like, we're going to go Eastern on them. And, Mike, like I said, didn't know a ton about turkey hunting. So he didn't know what I meant anyway. But I did. I threw out my Eastern sexy hen. I hit with a little bit of yonk, 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 yonk. And those birds absolutely lit on fire. It was cool. Like they were gobbling every breath. I shut up after that and they just kept on gobbling. Well, I could tell they were getting closer, but they weren't coming very quick. And they kept coming, then all of a sudden they went quiet. Well, next thing I know, here comes three redheads underneath that gate, like underneath that little piece of fence that you wouldn't think, like in between the cactuses, you wouldn't think that birds would come through that. They sure came through it. It was the lead bird and then two birds behind him. And the front bird is the one that I ended up shooting. You could definitely tell he was Boss Gobbler because he come through on a mission. And I don't know what happened, but he saw something he didn't like when he got within distance of the decoy. Like he was probably 2 yards off the back of the decoy, and he stuck that neck up real high. And Mike and I were gonna try to double, but he stuck his neck up real high. And buddy, when he stuck his neck up, started craning around, I wasn't playing. I shot him, and it was Dunsky. Mike looked at me and goes, "You got him." And I'm like, "Yeah, get your gun up. Like, get ready, get your gun up." So Mike pulled his gun up, and the bird that I just had shot, his buddy that was with him, had obviously been picked on by him a time or two. And he heads over and starts, giving my bird on the ground a business. Well, the opening that we were looking at was probably 15, I don't know, 15, 10 yards wide. And the bird that I shot was getting flogged by the other one. It was out of sight, but I could see kind of the back end of him. And the bird came back across into the opening, and Mike's sitting there, and I'm like, "Mike, shoot him. You got to shoot him. Because those of you that turkey hunt a lot, you know that you can't wait for the perfect shot with a bird. Like turkeys are sporadic, they're jumpy, they're jerky, they're moving around all the time. Like you don't get a perfect shot, you get the shot. And I don't know if Mike wasn't down on his gun. I don't know what happened, but Mike shot and missed. And he was upset. He was actually kind of mad at me for telling him to shoot. But it's one of those things to where it's like, I would rather be the one trying to tell you to shoot and pull the trigger than you miss an opportunity. Because if that bird would have left, that bird wasn't coming back. Like he was spooked. He knew something was up. The jig was up. He was getting ready to bail. And I don't know. Sorry, Big Mike. You can still be mad at me if you want to, but I thought I did what was best in that situation. But my bird was a stud Rio. He was an older bird, had some big old hooks on him. I mean, it was cool. Big, thick paintbrush beard. His beard was about as thick as my Eastern that I'd shot, and the Eastern I shot was a stud. And it was a really, really cool hunt. Well, we get done there, and of course, Mike still has a tag too. So I want to make sure Mike's taken care of. So we get back to camp. And then Chuck tells me of a place to go where they like to roost. So basically, at this point, we're going to go deer hunt some turkeys. We get set up, we get comfortable, back in some stuff. Now, remind you, and you've heard me say this before, but anything and everything done in Texas has the ability to and wants to kill you. It's sharp, it's pokey, it doesn't even care. You lean up against it or you step on it, it's going to bite you, it's going to poke you, it's going to hurt you. Well, so we get set up, we're nice and comfortable, we're away from danger at the moment. And I've got Henrietta set up again out there in front of us, and we basically just get comfortable. We get in there at 4, the sun's not going down until like 8:45. And we get to, I call a little bit every now and then, but I didn't put a lot of effort into calling because I knew that either way it wasn't going to make a difference. Like the birds are not going to come to calling at that point of day. They're kind of out there doing their own thing. One time I did call and a bird off in the distance did gobble at us, but nothing ever happened. And I realized that there's a big cactus thicket between us and it, and it probably wasn't going to come through that. So we're sitting there, and it's probably 7:30 ish, and here come these two hens down in front of us, and they walk right up to Henrietta. They go over, they're like, "Hey, girl, hey," and piddle around over in the circle in front of her, and then they go on, skip on up, and head on up to roost. Well, we're sitting there, and I knew that either if there was a male in the area, those two jennies are going to bring him on to her. Like those two hens were going to bring it on in, and then the decoy is still sitting there for him to see. He was going to come on at some point. Well, so we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, here comes a full strut bird right down in front of us. We're talking probably 20, 25 yards. And Mike's like, Aaron. And I look over there, and I'm like, oh, baby. And Mike's got his gun up, got his gun on him. Great. He is at full strut. And I lean up and start to tell Mike, hey, let me know. And I'll raise his head. Boom. And Mike straight center punched that joker right in the shoulder. Feathers went everywhere. Like he nailed him. He wasn't taking a chance on that. Well, so Mike got his first bird, and we didn't know at the time, but got up to it. It was a super Jake. Like it was a big super Jake. And I told Mike, I was like, I'd have shot the crap out of him too. Like if that had happened in South Carolina, and I mean, South Carolina recently put in the law, no shooting Jakes or whatever, but that'd have been a hard one to pass up on because he was full strut and he was gobbling like a Tom. So it was one of those you just didn't know. But Mike center punched him. So me and Mike both got to go home with some feathers. That was super cool. My wall in my man cave looks pretty awesome now because I've got my Osceola, my Eastern, and my Rio all up on the wall looking real pretty. But that was a lot of fun. I mean, if you've got the opportunity, you need to look up good old Chuck Ward and 67 hunts in Texas and make the trip. From South Carolina, the drive kind of sucks a little bit. I might recommend staying more than a few days just because that drive was terrible. Or if you fly, I feel like you miss something if you fly. Just because the drive out there, we got to see gators going through Louisiana. We got to have arguments in the car. Like it was a whole thing. It was pretty fun. But that kind of wrapped up turkey season for me. We went down to Texas and right at Easter, and that was a really cool experience. But like I said, I highly recommend getting out there, getting out west, going out and checking out some stuff and seeing what you can take care of. Like if you've never thought about doing the Grand Slam before, to me, it's worth it just to get to see the countryside too. And of course, nail some birds. So guys, that about does it for this episode of The Lodge. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to start putting episodes. Some I'm going to have video footage for, but I'm going to start putting these episodes up on YouTube as well. I made a new intro that I'm going to post up on the socials, on social media, so you can see it. And then I'm going to start videoing the podcast and putting it on YouTube so everybody can see it too. But thank you all so much for tuning in. If you've got any questions or if you ever want me to talk about something specific on the podcast, please reach out on Instagram. Simply ask, send me a direct message. But until next time, tight lines and double lungs. Have a good one.